And hello there again. I'm Robert Winters, and we're back for the second half of Cambridge Inside Out tonight. This is, again, September 17th, 2024. Constitution Day is also the night of a full moon. And sometime after 8 o'clock, if you're watching here, you can go out and there'll be a partial lunar eclipse as well. So lots of things happening on heaven and earth here today. So, so those are the few things that I definitely wanted to touch upon. There were a few others that I thought would be noteworthy. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hop over here to uh, so again, I mentioned the thing about the Cambridge Mosaic, which is coming up quite soon. But let me, uh, whoops, I'm bouncing around a little bit to find it here. But well, anyway, I'll just sort of speak to it. So some other things that came up on the, um, yeah, so pardon me, I was having a little bit of technical difficulty there. So some other things that are happening is, I think I mentioned at the last city council, not city council, but the last time I did these programs a couple of weeks ago, that we had this sort of record number. I think we had nine applications or nine requests for applications for city boards and commissions. The deadlines for four of them have now passed, or five of them maybe, but whatever, we're up to five now. So again, I'll just say them rather than go to the screen and just say that. So until September 30th, you can still apply to be on the Cambridge Veterans Advisory Committee. There's the Family Policy Council, formerly known as the Kids Council, the Human Rights Commission, and the Cambridge Citizens Committee on Civic Unity. A new one, which was announced today, is if you have an interest in public transit, buses, subways, shuttles, you name it. They are seeking applicants now for the Cambridge Transit Advisory Committee. And for that, the other ones were deadline September 30th. For this one, it'll be Tuesday, October 15th. So again, be a good doobie. If you're a good citizen, at least consider getting the best education money can't buy, which is to serve on a Cambridge City Board or Commission. Now, one of the items that was on the city council meeting, well, really it was on the city council meeting on September 9th, as well as, which was a request for some legal opinion on the cannabis, I should say this, it's the Cannabis Business Permitting Ordinance. Um, and I found this very, very curious, but they want an opinion on whether or what they should do as far as extending this preference period for social equity and economic empowerment cannabis outlets to allow them to be selling recreational cannabis, well, marijuana, come on, recreational marijuana, while the medicinal marijuana places would be prevented within Cambridge from doing so, even though the ballot question a few years ago guaranteed them that after a period of time, the that the medicinal cannabis people would be able to also sell recreational. But Cambridge City Council has a little bit of an, I don't know, let's call it a sort of an anti-capitalist kind of orientation at times. And they kind of have a kind of a social justice orientation, even if sometimes I think they don't really understand what they're doing or thinking about it. But they wanted to, even though the cannabis business, let's say it again, Cannabis Business Permitting Ordinance was actually ordained 5 years ago. And again, it's been an interesting 5 years. COVID disrupted a lot, but the city council, they went through a very big controversy to finally basically say that they're basically picking winners. What they're saying is, we're going to let you, and you can open up and be engaged in this business, give you a head start. But the other one, no, you can't sell it right now, which to me is a little bit like restraint of trade. But I at least understood the intention. I always questioned whether it was legal, but as they say in basketball, no whistle, no foul, right? I think there actually was a legal challenge, but it didn't prevail. Anyway, so, COVID was around. At some point, they said, "Oh, well, we still have to give them an advantage." So you start the clock again as after COVID had been the rule for a while, and so they extended the preference period for, oh, I forget, another year, or I forget exactly how long it took, but that was about to expire like this coming week. So, what I found to be sort of comic in a way, the city council comes back and they say they want to, let me see if I get the correct words here. They want to, they wanted to extend it one more time, and the official language that would enable them to do that is that they have to rush it through because the deadline for expiration was coming up the following week. So they wanted to pass it through all stages of ordination, which is, by the way, what they did the last time too. Normally, you have to publicly post it, announce it, but publish it in a paper of general circulation, do all that routine. But they said, "Oh, no, 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 no. This is an emergency involving the health and safety of the people of Cambridge or their property." And that would then justify you being able to do an emergency ordination and skip the whole process. Now, on what planet does giving a preference to a cannabis outlet to your political friends, I'm going to just say it because I know they're my friends too, who are the operators of these social equity and economic empowerment cannabis outlets. So they again declared yet another emergency because of the emergency involving the health and safety of the people of Cambridge or their property. What marijuana has to do with this, I'm sorry, that's just beyond me. Anyway, so it came to a vote on Monday, and the city solicitor's opinion about this, which was relatively straightforward, came back, and on Monday for Monday's meeting, and then they passed it through all stages of ordination and the pressing emergency that it was. I will give credit to I mean, and I'm not getting down on the counselors for doing this because obviously they'd already done it once before. It's not the end of the world, but so I will give credit to Burhan Azim and Patty Nolan for saying, "Look, let's get real." you know, um, it's one thing to be, how I think Burhan was saying, how many times is he going to extend this? I mean, at some point this becomes ridiculous, and I think, and Patty Nolan in particular expressed concern about this being the second instance of passing this as a quote emergency, right? Anyway, it passed. The preference period is extended. End of story. All right. Now, another matter that sort of bridged both the September 9th and September 16th meetings was something I've been wondering about the disposition of for a long time, which is this property off of Bishop Allen Drive, formerly known as Austin Street. So it's up close to Austin Court, which comes off of Bishop Allen Drive, formerly known as Austin Street. But it was a little alleyway, essentially called Vail Court, and it was a row of some row buildings there that were abandoned for really, I think, close to 2 decades, and it was a real sore spot. Eventually, there was political pressure to have the city take the property by eminent domain, which they did. Many people believe the city lowballed the owners on this for the purchase price. I'm not going to say one way or another whether it's true or not. But whatever it was, it ended up in court. And it's been in court and it's still subject to litigation, even though this taking happened in, was it either 2014 or 2015? So it's been a while. Anyway, it's a matter of some interest to me because even as people are talking about rezoning of Central Square and the pressing need for housing, I look at that corner of Prospect Street and Bishop Allen Drive. And if you also include the abutting property, which is at Vail Court, it's a huge property. And I just, if the city can't work something out, they really ought to be, first off, settling this matter about Vail Court, but then working something cooperatively with the abutting property owners, which is with a gigantic parking lot that is permanently underutilized. There's actually two parking lots across the street from each other there. And find some way of getting a good housing solution for that project, possibly with ground floor retail, which would really, I think it would completely revolutionize that rather hostile section of Prospect Street. So I just see this as opportunity lost. So anyway, so there was a request for information about this. Like, come on, city council is finally saying, hey, we've heard about this, or we knew about this. What's up, city manager and law department? So they came back with a call to go into executive session. John Hawkinson said he should not go to executive session. The public has a right to know, and maybe he's right. I don't know, because I don't know what the particulars are. But anyway, they went into executive session for about an hour on Monday night, which was last night. And I don't know what they discussed because it's none of my business. But I'm going to reiterate here that if you're talking about central square zoning and you're talking about sort of general improvement of that area, let's solve it all at once. Could we do that for a change and actually look holistically at an area here and say, you got a property, we got a property, we got a need. Um, this is an unresolved matter. That utilizing that parking lot for as auxiliary parking to the large building at the corner of Prospect Street, in a sense, doesn't even make sense anymore now that we've passed, changed the ordinance where there are no more parking minimums. So could we not go back a little retroactively and just sort of minimize the parking or something? You know, anyway, I hope our city council and our city manager and our community development department can all figure out some Solomonic wisdom to actually make something really great happen there. And it couldn't be just be housing; it could also be something of a more recreational nature. Um, we are talking about the future of Starlight Square. Maybe Starlight Square 2.0 could be located into there, possibly. Who knows? But come on, we got some good planners, and we got a lot of planners in the CDD, and I think they would actually love to have a challenge of coming up with a really good plan that could be more of a public-private arrangement. I think that would just be a great thing if we can pull it off. So now, probably the biggest item, arguably the most um, controversial, I would say, that was on the agenda, again, bridging both the September 9th and the September 16th meetings, was so the Housing Committee, which is sort of co-chaired by, I believe, Siddiqui and Azim, has been promoting, primarily putting it out there publicly to say we want to end exclusionary zoning, which is kind of a nonsense term, quite honestly. um, they to allow multifamily housing in all zones of the city. I mean, multifamily housing is the rule more so than the exception in residence C1 districts and what have you. But we have some residence A districts and residence B, which I think they have a lot of two families and whatever. So the question is, why shouldn't you have you know three-family homes or more in all zones of the city? Now, I'm okay for allowing multifamily housing anywhere. All right. And in fact, anybody who actually lives in some of these zones knows that there are homes that are functionally operating as multifamilies, that there are rentals going on within them anyway. So let's just acknowledge it and move on from there. So I don't think that um, the allowing multifamily housing everywhere in the city is a out of line idea. I think it's a pretty simple modification. What complicates this is that these a better Cambridge characters, they're part of this sort of national cult, the YIMBY cult, that basically says big, pile it higher, deeper, more density, more height, more everything. Don't matter, it doesn't matter where. And they seem to have a hostility, almost a resentment. Maybe it's built based on envy for the fact that there are people who actually choose to live in lower density parts of the city, single family homes, two family homes, and whatever. And it's almost like there's like a meanness about it. Instead of say, we'll show you, you aristocratic bastards. We want, before we're done here, you're going to have a 6-story or a 12-story, depending on your interpretation of the proposals, apartment building right next to you, or you and your pretty little garden, you know. Um, and I find this to be just the height of arrogance. I mean, people love to use that word diversity in Cambridge. I actually think diversity of housing stock is a good thing. It's a very good thing. Having different types of neighborhoods is a good thing. I live in a triple decker. I own a triple decker. I live in a block where it's mixed commercial and residential. I'm perfectly okay with that, but a lot of people wouldn't be okay with that. A lot of people would rather live on a block with, single family homes, two family homes, maybe packed together tightly, maybe not, but it's their choice, you know so for the city mothers and fathers to sort of come in and say, you should not have that choice, to live in an area such as that. Don't you know that they invoke the notion of there's a crisis, right? Never let a crisis go to waste, because you never know what kind you can push through politically as long as you declare a crisis, right? Well, there is a housing crisis, and I just want to remind everybody that some of the way this is being addressed at the state level was through the MBTA Communities Act. Now, the MBTA Communities Act, which is itself somewhat controversial, there are places like down in Milton, or I think up in Salem, where they're refusing to comply, and then the state and the attorney general is kind of saying, well, we're going to sue you, we're going to block all state aid to your community if you don't come up with a plan for developing relatively dense apartment building and multifamily zones within your otherwise single family enclave. Now, I agree with the intention of the MBTA Communities Act. I think it's a great thing. I think there are some questions about whether the high-speed rail Mattapan line is a true rapid transit, but that's another question. Um, but guess what Cambridge had to do in order to meet the MBTA Communities Act? The answer is they didn't have to do a damn thing, because we already have zoning in much of the city, and certainly near all, I believe, all transit areas, places served by transit, where we have multifamily homes, high density multifamily homes, and more than a few apartment buildings of some significance. Now, should there be more? Maybe. I would say so. I think Central Square could use a little more height. I think it could use more density. It could use more housing in and around Central Square. Some of those parking lots in particular, I think, would be really good sites for housing, right? But let's not forget, we already not only meet the requirements of the MBTA Communities Act, we greatly exceed them. So this notion that somehow Cambridge is falling down on the job in producing housing for the region is a farce. It really is a farce. The question should not be whether, we should sort of act as in an emergency type mindset in order to uh, potentially produce some very unintended consequences, and have neighborhoods be, let's say, worse than they are currently. I mean, listen, I go to events in high density parts of town. I go to parts of Cambridge in low density parts of town. And there are many places that I've been to over the years where, honestly, if they put a 50-foot wall or a 10-story building next to and they just plopped it down in the midst of a bunch of single family homes, it would be bizarre. I mean, it would really be bizarre. Now, some may argue, well, the economics is such that that likely won't happen. Well, that may or may not be true. The truth of the matter is, as Heather Hoffman will tell you down in East Cambridge, who she often refers to as the sacrificial zone, it's often the places which are the soft spots, the soft real estate spots, the ones that where you can get cheaper and whatever, which is where the brunt of these proposals would really be felt, you know. So again, I live in mid Cambridge. I live on a main corridor. Depending on during the envision process, Broadway was not considered a main corridor because it didn't have like the red line or anything on it like that. The ABC people likely would view Broadway as a main corridor that is ripe for massive high-scale development. I hope not, personally. It could use a little more, but I don't want to see, I don't want to see 13-story buildings everywhere along Broadway. I really don't. That's my choice. I'm sorry. I live here, you know, and I don't think people should be treating people like me as though we're some sort of pariahs because we kind of like things to be not exactly as they are, but something that's kind of an outgrowth of what we are, you know. Um, so I'm not in favor of some of the proposals that, what I'm referring to as the Azim Siddiqui, build higher, taller, deeper, anywhere and everywhere, you know. Now, on a political sense, I don't know where this is going because, even people like Burhan Azim and Sambal Siddiqui get votes. They're not all out of like public housing and they're not all renters. I mean, some of them, we'll just sort of say they seem like, nice young folks, good professional credentials. A lot of people in West Cambridge, for example, might be inclined to vote for somebody like Burhan Azim or Sambal Siddiqui, and I'm talking about even homeowners. But, if you basically come in and just assault them, you know, and you saw a little taste of that when some of the bicycle changes happened this past year. Everybody in Garden Street kind of got lit up over that. Not just Garden Street, but a lot of the surrounding streets as well. So this could be a real political backlash in the making. By the way, speaking of just changing gears a little bit, speaking of a potential political backlash in the making, we won't know until soon enough, but in I think we're going to have in early October, early October will be the tax rate hearing, or actually really it's the hearing where they do what they call the tax classification. So that's basically where where the city council, as it always does, decides to skew the tax rates to make the commercial tax rates be significantly greater than the residential within the confines of state law of how much you can skew it. You cannot legally dump it all onto the commercial, but currently commercial tax base covers about 2/3 of the tax revenue for the city. But here's the problem. The problems is that residential property values, as we all know, have been increasing pretty steadily. I'm not happy about that, but even as a homeowner, I'm saying I'm not happy about that. But they are going up, and the your building is assessed on fair market value. So if somebody's willing to drop $2 million for a shack, then the shack's worth $2 million. Simple as that. I mean, modified a little bit by the wisdom of the assessor's office. So if residential taxes or values are going up radically, normally you would then reduce the residential rate to make up for it so that there's not too much of a scary moment. But the commercial property values have been relatively flat, and new commercial development has been far less than it was in previous years. Now, if you couple this with the city's aggressive stance toward building subsidized housing, which produces virtually zero tax revenue, the way the city has made up for that, uh, just like the way they made up for the lower assessed values during the rent control era, is they basically allow more commercial development. And then the commercial development is exempt from Prop 2.5 tax levy limits. And so we were able to actually make up the difference so that there wouldn't be a big hit on the residential taxpayer. Well, we have a little bit of a perfect storm happening here. The city budget has been increasing faster than inflation. Commercial property values are relatively flat. Residential values are still accelerating, or at least rising steadily. And we're also building properties where the burden of providing services for the residents is not even closely matched by the amount of minimal amount of tax revenue coming from it. So if you add up all those factors together, there's a very, very good chance that single, two, and three family homeowners are going to see a gigantic increase in their taxes this year. I don't know this for a fact. It may be another year before you really feel it, because there's a bit of a lag in when the assessed values that get used are, but that's coming. So we'll see. So if you're a person living in West Cambridge, you might very well be simultaneously hit with a proposal to put a 12-story building next to you and a $1,500 increase in your tax bill. So good luck. Good luck. Anyway, we're sort of winding down here now, so I guess I'll leave it at that, and we'll bring some other thrilling business here in another couple of weeks. I think it's either 2 or 3 weeks, first Tuesday of the month. So anyway, see you soon on Cambridge Inside Out.